There comes a moment in life when you have to ask yourself a hard question. Does this thing I believe actually make a difference? Because, see, we don't hold on to things just for tradition's sake. We don't continue in something just because somebody told us to, or at least we shouldn't. So let's ask this question honestly. If God cannot be perceived, experienced, or engaged in any meaningful way, does God even matter? Because what good is a light that never shines? What good is a key that never unlocks? What good is a God who never shows up? Today, we're going to look at the facts, the data, the history, and by the end, you might just see what I've come to understand. God is an unnecessary variable. Let's talk about it. A great place to start would be the limits of human perception. We as human beings, we experience the world through our senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. It's how we confirm reality as we experience it. But every single theological tradition describes God as beyond human perception, invisible, untouchable, outside of both time and space, situating God in an ever relocating space of universal imperceptibility. A universally imperceptible God holds absolutely no objective relevance to humanity as a whole, or the universe for that matter, which means, by definition, that this intelligent designer, according to many theological traditions, has given us no physical or cognitive ability to experience, measure, or engage with it. Now let's pause there. If an all powerful, all knowing creator designed us, but left us with no way to perceive, confirm, or connect with them, other than the speculative delusions of the well intentioned but misinformed, that leaves us with only two options. This creator is either incompetent or this creator is indifferent. And either way, that doesn't sound like a God that matters. A God outside of reality is outside of reach and therefore not omnipresent. How do you feel about having a relationship with a God that you can't actually have a relationship with? It's giving deadbeat energy. I guess God is like a deadbeat dad: no calls, no visits, no evidence. Which brings us to the next point in our conversation: the absolute failure of empirical evidence. The truth is, no scientifically verifiable events conclusively demonstrate the existence of any deity. Miracles and supernatural claims either lack credible evidence or can be explained through natural or psychological phenomena. Because every so called miracle that's been tested, every so called divine encounter that's been studied, has been shown to be completely natural and measurable as psychological, sociological, or even neurological phenomena. From the rapture of being caught up in collective worship to the seemingly transcendent moments that flow from corporate prayer, every single one of these experiences are explainable without invoking a deity, or its ghost, or its son. Equating your goosebumps to a divine encounter is no different than believing that someone with sleep paralysis has a witch riding their back, which highlights the unscrupulousness of religious superstition and that it assigns any natural phenomena that it doesn't have the fortitude to investigate as either divine or demonic. Now, some will say, but God reveals himself in ways that go beyond science. But, family, what exactly is that? Like, honestly, what do those words even mean? Define beyond science and the path you took to get there. Where is this undeniable evidence? And even if we were to take personal religious experiences at face value, which we shouldn't, why do they always conveniently align with cultural upbringing? The Christian sees Jesus, the Muslim hears Allah, the Hindu experiences Krishna. If God were truly revealing himself, wouldn't the experience be universal? But it's not, because belief in God is shaped more by geography than reality. And that should make us think. Cultural upbringing and societal norms shape beliefs about God, which makes people more open to attaching God to events or circumstances that they don't quite understand. Now, when they do this, they make the fallacy of incredulity by believing that because they cannot explain this, then this cannot be explained, and therefore, God. I call this incredulity because it is highly arrogant to assume that everyone else's comprehension halts at the boundaries of your ignorance. There's an additional logical flaw in this line of thinking as well. Because if something indeed cannot be explained, then an explanation cannot be inferred, i.e., God cannot be the explanation. At best, God could be a guess, and not a very educated one. So here's a question that I want you to give some thought to. What does it really mean to believe in something that there is absolutely no evidence for? What does that likely imply about other decisions and commitments a person who believes is likely to make in their everyday lives? Which is the perfect segue to another point in this discussion. What is the utility of God against the backdrop of human progress? So let's talk about morality. People say without God, there's no moral foundation. But history tells a much different story. Because if God were the standard of morality, then why is it that in every era, every time society progressed, it wasn't religion leading the way, it was people? It wasn't the church that ended slavery, it was humanists who challenged religious normalcy. It wasn't religious leaders who fought for civil rights first. It was people who demanded justice in spite of religion's resistance. I'd encourage you to research A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin. And then, as a bonus point, remember that Dr. King didn't give the Bible credit for his strategy. He gave Gandhi credit for his strategy. Think about that. Every time humanity took a step toward compassion, equality, and justice, religion had to be dragged to catch up. The truth is, morality isn't dictated by belief in God. It's dictated by human empathy, by reason, by the ability to see someone suffering and say, you know what, this isn't right. And when we finally let go of outdated dogma, when we stop attributing our goodness to a divine command, we start to see that morality isn't something given to us, it's something that we cultivate together. Can you recall a time from your childhood when you remember realizing that something you were doing was wrong, not because someone told you, but because you were impacted by the way it made others feel? Now, before we get to the next part in our conversation, and hold on because it only gets heavier from here, did you know that since March of last year, this channel has grown from 52 to now nearly 10,500 subscribers? And it hasn't just been views, we've been committed to building community and creating opportunity that supports the provision of resources, space, and activity for people who are looking to continue living and growing beyond religious superstition. If you'd like to be a part of this growing community, it's real easy. Number one, hit that subscription button and notification bell so that you never miss a moment. Number two, join our Discord and engage with other people who are on similar journeys as yourself. Number three, become a financial supporter of the channel, either through YouTube or through our Patreon, and get access to exclusive perks. Number four, check out our merch store for some dope stuff to rock with or to grow with. And number five, tell us where you're watching from because we could be coming to your area real soon. Now, back to this conversation. Are y'all ready to go deeper? Let's deal with this question. Does God actually impact life? If God's existence does not produce discernible and measurable effects, God's role is functionally irrelevant to daily life. The data repeatedly proves that events occur with or without belief in God, demonstrating flawless independence from divine intervention. There have been several studies on intercessory prayer that have consistently concluded that prayer has no statistically significant impact on outcomes. Take two different groups of people with cancer and give them both cancer treatment, but pray over one group while not praying over the other. The rate of decline or improvement will be statistically identical for both groups. Now, reverse that scenario. Both of the groups receive prayer and only one of the groups receive life saving treatment. While this would be an unethical medical experiment, thanks to faith healers, we already have enough data to demonstrate that when people choose God over medical intervention, the chances for decline or death increase drastically. So, unfortunately, believing in God has no measurable impact on the life of the believer. And even worse, people who believe that God is the one working in their lives are often overlooking and taking advantage of the very real people who are actually doing the work. Now, some will say, but belief in God gives my life meaning. And I hear you, but let's think about that for a second. Purpose isn't something handed down from the heavens, it's something we cultivate. It's the relationships we build, the passions we pursue, and the impacts we have on others. It's not found in ancient texts, beloved, it's found in you. And here's the kicker. If God were truly the source of meaning, then why do non believers report the same levels of happiness, purpose, and fulfillment as the faithful? If belief in God were the secret to peace, then why do believers experience just as much anxiety, depression, and suffering as everyone else? Have you ever been to a funeral with believers? Heaven produces no comfort for the dying or the mourning. Because at the end of the day, the idea of God is culturally acceptable, but actively impotent. If there is a God, it's ghosting us, and we keep making excuses. Can you remember a time that you've made excuses for God's absence in your life? So here's what I want to leave you with. If God is imperceptible, if God has no verifiable influence on human morality, if God does not impact purpose, meaning, or fulfillment in any measurable way, then what exactly is the utility of God's existence? If the function of a thing is non existent, then its existence is irrelevant. Without observable impact or necessity in explaining the natural world, God's existence appears to have no utility or consequence in any world that we can experience. And that is why the data says God doesn't matter. And contrary to what many pastors may want you to believe, this is not bad news. As a matter of fact, this is the good news. The truth is that decreasing our reliance on unrealistic, supernatural, or superstitious explanations, while also emphasizing human empathy, responsibility, and capacity, leads to more proactive problem solving and more human collaboration and innovation. There is a whole world out here that is waiting for your unique eye of exploration and your capacity to contribute to our forward progress as humanity. Now, if this conversation got you thinking, trust me, you're going to want to keep going. First up, check out the top 10 ways the church manipulates its followers. If you've ever felt like religion was playing chess with your emotions, in this one, I spent some time giving you a little bit of insight into that. Or maybe you're curious about how deep the Jehovah's Witness rabbit hole goes. Ryan Koltastic lays it all out in the top 10 worst beliefs as an ex-Jehovah's Witness. Eye-opening stuff. And if you're still questioning the Bible's moral authority, Chris Mallard over at the Daily Atheist Media Network got you covered with the 10 reasons the Bible is not a good moral God and never was. Spoiler alert, it's not looking good for the good book. So pick one, pick two, hell, binge all three. But whatever you do, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep thinking for yourself. And as always, stay progressive and keep rising.